Live from New York, it's Deloitte's Tech Trends 2025. Oh, so happy to be here with you all today. My name is Kelly Raskovich, and I am an executive editor for this year's Tech Trends 2025. And I am honored to be with my friends and colleagues, Mike Bechtel, he's our chief futurist, Anjali Sheikh, she is our US CIO Program Managing Director, and Bill Briggs, our Chief Technology Officer. So happy to be here today and be with you all.
Oh, Kelly, pumped to be with you too.
So excited. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so before I dive into questions, one of the things and the theme of this year's report is AI everywhere. So that'll certainly be an undertone for this conversation. And one of the things we noticed is that AI is so seamless and so ubiquitous, it's going to become like electricity or HTTP. It's the foundation for everything we do, not only in our personal lives, but also our business. So really excited to dive in. Bill, I'll start with you.
Okay.
I know you've been here for nearly 2 decades.
Started in Yale School, yeah.
But tell us how Tech Trends originated and kind of the story there.
Yeah, and listen, we've been saying for a long time, every company is a technology company. And technology is the heart of strategy, it's the heart of mission for government agencies. And so Tech Trends has always been trying to take a look at all of the change that's happening. It's the 16th year, which is crazy.
Tech Trends can drive.
Scott is driver's license.
True, which is amazing. But it's always said, let's look out 18 to 24 months. So it's a forward-looking view for sure.
Yep.
But I think the thing I'm most proud of, and that this team has done over the years, it's really trying to translate the feeling of there's so much change that for our client executives, it can feel overwhelming. I mean, how do we even get our hands around everything that's happening, much less what does it mean for our business and our customers or citizens or our products in the market? And then the hardest question of what do we do about it? So we like to say from the so what to the now what.
Yeah.
And the tone of Trends is very optimistic. It's very much a business lens of the value and impact. Even as we celebrate emergent trends, it's not a shiny object parade. It's saying what's real, how do we make it real?
Yep.
And I think the undercurrent is it may feel deeply unprecedented, especially in moments like this with AI exploding in mindshare, but it is actually deeply precedented. The advances that are happening, we can be more confident in the future than maybe it feels like in the moment. And I love that view of like we're deeply, deeply ambitious and trying to spark what we should do and how we should do it, but we're also saying it comes from a place of more known than maybe it feels.
Yeah. I also love the light. I also love the fact that we're shining a light on where we're headed, because it also helps soften the target to think about where we want to go.
Yeah. And I'll pull on Bill's thread about being unprecedented. All the tech executives, CIOs that we talk to, they're saying back to me like, this is not new. This is what technology has been doing for the last 20 or 30 years. But it's almost this phenomenon that the rest of the C-suite, the board, the organization as a whole has started getting up to that level to be like, oh, this matters and we've got to do something about it in a different way. And I think that's kind of the buzz that's happening this year.
100%. I mean, we might think about years ago, the main audience that would be excited about tech trends was the CIO or the CTO. And Anjali, your point, now it's the line of business leaders, the CEO, the C-suite, and the board who are putting pressure on the tech executive. And sometimes they're coming in saying, no, we have to go and chase this shiny object, and we're helping arm everyone.
Right.
A bit of let's take a deep breath.
Right.
Like we no doubt need to do something.
Right. You know, Bill and team, the function of the CIO for years has been to operate the tech estate, to keep the lights on, to manage the plumbing at cost and with continuity.
Yep.
And I think to our shared point, something happened about 2 years ago where Gen Pop, as we say in the health sector, general population, you know, my aunt at a family holiday dinner comes up to me, puts potatoes on my plate and says, did you know that computers can paint pictures and write poetry now? And given my line of work, I was like, I am aware. and so AI isn't new. Automation isn't new. IT certainly isn't new. But there's something uniquely new in AI right now that I think is activating everybody.
I love it. How can business and technology leaders use this report to their advantage as they dive in?
Okay. So,
So I think pulling on that same kind of note, business leaders are as excited about this as tech leaders, right? And what we're finding over and over through all of our conversations is that for CIOs, they're burdening, they're shouldering the burden, if you will, of being that educator of technology, of this technology to their organizations, but they also need to stay ahead of emerging technology in a consumable way. And business leaders want to be part of that conversation and kind of offload some of that burden from their CIO, so jointly having conversations around the emerging technologies, around what AI can unlock for their organizations. I think the report this year really provides it in a very consumable way, and I love the framing of the macro forces and how you hit each one of those on how should you be thinking about AI against all these dimensions.
You can't, it's like Candyman and Beetlejuice. You can't say macro forces without having it have a beat of, like the power of what we've done for a long time in tech trends, in our research for decades. Like, of course, there's the shinier objects that get a lot of attention. The advances in AI, we'll talk about the advances in spatial computing, that's exciting. Like, how do we think about the compute layer and what it unlocks? All of those are the things that people typically want to talk about when you say tech trends. Where we come in, that's the mental mindset of that's what we're really going to focus on. In our macro forces, we also put a light on the business of tech and the things that have to be true foundationally and from an IT department and from a budget. So things like core modernization. All of our clients have decades of investment. They're not going anywhere. They can be the things that stop innovation, but we also can apply advanced technology to get more out of them and make them ready to participate in the future. That's something CIOs in particular will give us an amen, hallelujah, because we're making that a board level conversation.
Right, yep.
Yeah.
Right? Mike, you like to say it's not, oh, you gotta eat your vegetables before you have your dessert. There's a little bit of that, for sure, but there's also real advances happening in that. The role of the tech exec, Anjali, it's your day-to-day, like how that's being elevated, but really the difference in the expectations for what the technology organization has. Like, all of those don't typically get the same mind share when we talk about emerging tech. And our point is no one's piece of the story can ever be the hero.
Yep.
And even as we elevate AI, because it is everywhere, it's increasingly becoming fabric. In it only matters if we can put it in combination with these other trends. And really, it only matters for real if we can put it in place for value and impact.
Yeah.
Well, and there's also something for everyone in the report. I think 10 years ago, we said that every company is going to become a tech company. And in some way, shape, or form, that's become true because out of every company, either tech-fueled or tech-centric. So the technology is at the foundation for everything we do.
And we argue that there's not a dollar revenue that does not go through the company that technology does not touch. So if you think about that, and if you put that into context, that's customer engagement, that's employee engagement, that's new revenue streams. That's now just keeping the lights on for your business, not just technology.
Right.
Yeah. What makes this year's report special?
Well, we've discussed the percentage of mind share and oxygen in every room focused on both traditional and generative AI.
Yep.
And as we talk to our clients across the lower 48, across the globe, and in pretty much every sector, one of the things that we found was that with that hyper focus on AI is coming a bit of an emerging fatigue.
Yeah.
And it's not like, oh no, that again. It's just more like, oh yeah, that, sure, but what's it good for, right? And where are people actually getting value out of it? Yeah. And so I think this year's report, it's really focused on this idea of AI sort of diffusing into the foundation of other technology movements and business initiatives worth our focus. I'll give you an example. People talk about things like spatial computing. Okay, AR, VR, unlimited reality. Okay, cool. Well, turns out artificial intelligence, both traditional and gen, are powering the ability to do world design, set design, content factories in a way that human designers simply couldn't. And so you say, oh, okay, AI's going from sort of focus to foundation, that's what marks this year's report, is sort of AI under all the other stuff that matters.
I love that. Powering everything.
Kelly, you hinted in your intro, and we were at CES a few weeks ago. There wasn't a single booth in however many tens of thousands of square footage on display where one of the companies said, now with electricity. And it doesn't mean that that's not an important dimension. It's just like Mike was saying, AI moving as a feature versus the product or the headline and the focus. Now, you have to know deeply what AI can and can't do, and it's a moving goalpost, which is amazing. So our line ecosystem partners, even Deloitte, we're investing in ways to push what's possible. So we're adding more clubs to the bag as golfers. But yeah, the shift from, we only want to talk about AI, to AI is a bit of a dangling modifier if it's not applied to something. So now it's embedded in how do we think about customer service in a different way? How do we think about our engineering capability and delivering software in a way we couldn't before, faster clip, higher quality. And so I think that's we'll talk less. This might seem like a bit of a contradiction. We'll talk less about it, but it will be more pervasive. And we couldn't have done what we're doing with technology without it.
Yeah. I'm just excited that you brought dangling modifier into the mix. Bill's wife, who's an English major, is doing a merry jig right now, celebrating sentence diagramming. I'm here for it.
Conservation of karma, computer engineer with an MBA that's married to an English major, is a preschool teacher. It's an amazing Wonder Twin powers. Yeah.
I love it. And that's why we love you all. As we think about spatial computing, what are we seeing companies undertake as it relates to this, and what's headed next as we think through it?
Yeah, the whole, like when we say spatial computing, it's really saying, hey, the physical world has space.
Yes.
And what we do as business operates, as mission is accomplished, it takes place in the physical world. And for too long, tech solutions were trying to approximate what was happening in real life. What we moved to is the idea of, hey, one, physical, digital together, there's a lot of power to unlock. And that's on the manufacturing floor. How do we understand how to tune for improvements in operations? It's in simulation, a lot of work going on. And if we can actually simulate the physics and to a very high detail, how are we going to build the next factory? We can actually plan it ahead of time, not just for day one, but at full capacity if we've done multiple product changeovers in a way that just unlocks tremendous value. And then there's the other end of it, which is, hey, we want to have virtual experiences that make us feel present in the physical. So that's augmented reality, where we're seeing things overlaid in the real world, or it's virtual reality where we're being able to simulate things that wouldn't be possible. So like Paramount Global using VR to help onboard and train people who won't ever be able to actually be on the set of a production, but it's an important part of their business. They want more people to understand what that's like.
Right.
And so we could have a PowerPoint, we could have a video kind of telling you kind of what happens, or you're walking through from the view of a grip or someone on set to all the magic that happens to deeply appreciate the business in a way that wouldn't be possible.
It's examples like a conversation we had with Fraser Health, where they said, listen, we could talk in abstractions about the patient journey through the health system, or we could actually, using computer vision, sensors, the Internet of Things, if you remember that term, to track patients and understand where they're actually spending time, where they're finding value and efficiency, or where they're stuck.
Yeah.
And so you'll notice these stories don't feel like video games. They feel like business utility.
Yeah.
And that's why spatial computing continues to ascend and grow up. It's not about laser swords and headsets only. No, it is also about that. But it's also about some real meaningful ways of bringing more value to the table.
And the beat on a big emphasis in the spatial computing trend is that to do all of the amazing things we're talking about, there's hard work below the waterline on digital assets and how do we manage that and the life cycle to create these experiences, which are very different than the point-click type of the old days or even the touch and swipe. If we talk about more natural, more human, intuitive, it's a completely different design language, and it requires just like we talk, you can't do AI without data. You can't do spatial computing without digital assets and sensors and having that linked, not kind of, sort of, to the real world, but they have to absolutely represent reality. And that's something most organizations haven't invested in at all. And,
Well, and there has to be a strategy for that. I know we also spoke to Benfica, the Portuguese football club. And I love, as an old outside mid myself, that they can track the players' movements throughout a game and collect 2,000 plus data points and see if they were in a certain position, could they have played better? Or it even helps them in terms of recruiting and how to think through how do they need to scale up their organization to have that next level of talent come through.
Yeah, and if you think about kind of the Gen Pop, that their eyes gloss over when you say spatial computing, when you go back and just make it basic enough around what is the business needs? How can you transform the way of working today and getting people out of that element? So if you're going to, there's a balance between streamlining current processes using AI or emerging technology, and then there's a elevation of what we're doing today. Can you blow up what you're doing today and reinvent it with spatial computing at the heart of it?
Yeah,
right. And that's the question. And tech executives, CIOs, CTOs will figure out what the tech can be delivered. It's the business process, or how are you thinking about transforming the way you're doing things today? That's the real unlock.
Angela, that's such a huge, like, the biggest barrier to all of these tech futures becoming real is the imagination and creativity, like the inertia of how we've always done things.
Right.
Is real, and the instinct is to take new tech and apply it to the things we've always done and do it a little bit differently. Right. But how do we truly reimagine? Like, those words get maybe overused by consultants sometimes, but that's the real power of painting the picture of why this actually matters, right?
And can you equip the CEO, the CFO, the board with the knowledge, the fluency to not just look up around one corner or two corners, but 3, 5, 6 corners, right? Like, that's the push.
Generative AI has been the buzzword du jour, or 2 years rather. And is it really worth the hype it's receiving? And how are we seeing organizations unlock value from it?
Yeah, I joke with friends and family that I'm on a 25-year journey from geek to geezer. Which is to say, I've seen hype cycles come and go.
Yeah.
And what I'll tell you is, generative AI specifically is precisely as useful as the problem it's set out to solve. What we've seen with our Deloitte Tech Trends this year, right, again, across geography and sector, is this recognition that maybe a majority of folks, I don't want to say 90%, have it feel pseudoscientific, but let's say most folks, they're looking at it as a cost reduction play, right? As a friend said to me, he said, it's like a weight loss pill. And I said, oh goodness, here we go. But what he meant was, oh, good news, we can do the work we're doing today without Toby. And I'm thinking to myself, what about Toby, right? Well, here's the thing. A growing subset of our clients are looking at generative AI as a means to do today's work better, right? Richer. And you notice that's not a cost reduction play. That's saying, look how much we can equip and augment Toby to do bigger, better things. Yep. There's a tiny subset of our clients we've talked to that are starting to go after the holy grail, which is tomorrow's work, right? The stuff that we couldn't do if not but for. And so as we talk to clients this year about Gen AI, and specifically the emergence of what folks are calling agentic AI, it's this recognition that, oh goodness, we can have a whole fleet of computerized sidekicks who are like our posse, right? Helping us with everything from call center management to supply chain optimizations to all the back office stuff you could imagine. And that's a better way of working, not just a cheaper way of working.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What are the implications of this from a leadership perspective, and how are kind of the roles and responsibilities evolving because of all of this?
It's a great question, and organizations are struggling with it, right? We surveyed over 200 executives, and only 13% felt like there was defined roles and responsibilities across their organization when it came to AI. 1-3.
Yeah.
Right? But I think what Mike's getting to is there's the promise, which still holds, and then there's just the disappointment, which is, hey, we've done all these proof of concepts, we've tried these little things, but again, in the lens of streamlining it versus elevating it, and then you get the people who are supposed to be leading it, and they're like, what am I supposed to be doing? But there are 3 archetypes, if you will, that we're seeing pop up. There's like the shared model where everyone is part of the conversation. And the business will say they own the data, so they need to be part of the conversation. Then you have an IT-led model where the CIO is still the one kind of delivering the tech and prioritizing the use cases. And then you have this emerging one around the chief data analytics officer role, the chief AI officer role. Like, this is your problem to go solve across the organization. Good luck. And I think, what we're going to see in the next 12 months, and I do think it's for this year, we are going to see more accountability, more shared accountability around what are the responsibilities of each individual layer within an organization. But I do believe that the tone has to be set from the top, like it's CEO down.
But you hit on it before, the city of fluency. And the number one thing we hear from, like Anjali was our CIO program and tech exec program. We have equivalent programs for CFO, CEO, board effectiveness for board directors. And this thing we hear over and over is that they want help to demystify what this technology is and what it means and what's real and what, because they need to be able to not just be in a conversation and ask questions, sure, but actually steer broader strategy, which is operations, business process, and product market, even redefining business models. And no one on a board would abdicate strategy to one leader and say it's only their responsibility, right? And the same way for a long time, technology is, well, we have a CIO, a CTO, or like we're good.
Yeah, they're going to be driving
You guys got it.
You're SAP.
Or maybe we'd have, I'm on a few boards, we have a token technologist on the board. Like, thank God you're here, and just let us know. No, everyone's shared. If every company's a tech company, tech has to be a part of everyone's wheelhouse. Now, it doesn't mean everyone is going to be doing the vector tuning of an AI model. But they should know what it means to do that at scale. And in a way, I think Deloitte's Tech Trends report is a bit of an anecdote. What it's doing is helping protect against the more charlatan, waving hand rhetoric, press release, vendor conference claims of just trust us and we've got it all figured out for you. And that's not to dismiss the advances that are happening in the tech community.
Right.
But it's not, you can't abdicate responsibility for what it is, what it means, and what to do about it.
It has to be that shared tech agenda.
Well, and we've been talking about tech fluency for a decade plus now, through all of our research and Deloitte's perspective. I think that the notion of tech fluency for the organization has taken a truly different meaning because of that. Because it's not just about the technology. It's about how do I, as a leader, not only embrace the technology and expect it, like the internet to be working, but what am I going to do about it? How am I going to embed this into the strategy? And we're seeing the investments follow.
I'm a big Duolingo. I think I'm 1,075 days on my Espanol journey. Right?
Say something.
And I think, 10 years ago, tech fluency was donde está el baño, right? Like the very basic, I can get around and get a cerveza, a finding facility, and get to the airport. And now it's much more about, you have to be able to have a nuanced understanding and conversation. So the idea of fluency was always there's a degree, but the expectation is a much higher bar. By the way, that takes a lot of investment and work and commitment from CEO on down.
And space they don't necessarily have in their day-to-day. So coming back to tech trends, being a consumable medium to get fluent in some of these topics is critical.
That's really been the mission, right? I mean, there's this old quote, it's either Peter Drucker or Michael Porter, and apologies to whoever of the two of you I just misquoted, but it's that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that's to say that organizational inertia and habituation, ways of working, muck up best laid intents. Well, one of the things, Anjali, to your, I think, great point, we've sort of learned that operations eats innovation for lunch.
Yeah.
And our clients repeatedly tell us with our CIO program and our research that they're so busy reacting to today's urgent matters that looking ahead feels like a luxury, maybe even an indulgence. And so Tech Trends aims to be, as Bill said so well, the right mixing board of what's now and what's next in a consumable enough package where they don't feel guilty for spending an hour sharpening the saw.
Well, and there's so much coming at them that distilling what the signal from the noise is harder now more than ever.
And it's the real stories from organizations around the world and across industries that matter. And it's funny, sometimes people say, well, you don't have one exactly for what I do in my subsector. But we're also seeing this convergence between and across industries where there's almost more learnings to say, hey, what are we doing in oil and gas? How might that apply to a hospital room? Which might seem so bonkers, but it's real.
I have a semiconductor client who's like, go find out what they're doing in auto, because some of our processes mirror the painting of the doors on cars. I was like, okay. And sure. Yeah, sure. Okay. Oh, yeah, right away.
It's true.
But it's an important point, because that's the magic of the technology, that you can have not just a single use case, and then the silos within the organization also start melting away, because how you're using the technology and how I'm using it for a similar process. Yeah.
So one of the trends is about within the IT organization, taking IT and automation and applying almost like we're going to be the beachhead within the IT shop to show the rest of the organization what good looks like. I love that of the tech executive, she taking the baton and the torch and saying, follow me.
Right.
Yeah. Ethics and equity is also so important as we think about technology and the work that we do. What are some trends you're seeing around how do you avoid that bias as you're undergoing transformation or using some AI tools?
Oh, boy. Well, 2 years ago, our Deloitte Tech Trends led with this idea, Kelly, that trust trumps tech. And we knew it to be true because it's always come first. Right? You don't paint security, ethics, and governance on at the back and call victory. Right? You design from the front. Well,
wait, it's not a checklist that you just go down before.
No. Thankfully, it's no. But I'll tell you, Bill and team, over the last 2 years, what we've really begun to see is that, that old tech idiom, garbage in, garbage out.
Yep.
Right? Because AI is in an exponential moment, we're finding that it's worse than that. It's garbage in, garbage squared, which is wild.
Yep.
Because if you give something slightly biased, slightly thoughtless, and there's a difference, right? Biased is like, this thing is unfair. Thoughtless is like, did anybody check? Right?
Yeah.
But neither one is good, because run through an AI system, you're going to take bad to worse. Now, that might sound a little bit, which is why I would tell you, good news, it's also genius in, genius squared.
Yeah.
Right? And so what does that mean? It means thoughtfully sourced data, right? Data that reflects who we wish to be as equitable and ethical organizations, not the knuckleheadery that's been.
Yeah.
We can create some real magic as long as there's thoughtfulness plus at the jump.
Yeah. And I think it's important to challenge the notion that when you think about risk or trust, it slows down innovation. I think it's a moment in time, especially this year, to maybe scale back the thought of, the need for speed and get the foundations done right, especially when it comes to risk and trust, because your customers are expecting it. You're playing with their data.
Totally.
So the business might think they're accountable for the data or they own the data, but at the end of the day, it's individuals that own that data set.
Yeah.
So what you do and how you think about getting the fundamentals right and driving that shared accountability, where everyone feels like risk is not just the chief risk officer's role or the CISO's role.
Right.
Having the right conversations around these are the implications. What do we want to where do we want to stand as an organization? We know the stove is hot.
Yeah.
We're not going to touch it, right?
Yeah.
And regulations start coming into fold there. There's a lot of things to consider around the risk element.
Yeah, it was yesterday a conversation with a telco CTO, and the fact that we bundle, as we think about our macro forces, we bundle under the trust umbrella, security and privacy, which people get, regulatory and compliance, which is increasingly real and changing quickly.
Yeah.
And then ethics and morality. And the message for all of them is you've got a blue shift. And my kid on, it's not a compliance-based activity at the end of investment. It's actually shaping the investment portfolio up front. And then I think the most important thing from a tech, you have to embed the guardrails and policies and things that reflect your own values and culture and into the way that the technology is being built and delivered.
Yeah.
I don't wake up every morning and shake my fist at the heavens because I can't dunk a basketball, right? I've lived under the influence of gravity my entire life. It sounds like you thought about that. Maybe
Once or twice.
I don't wake anymore and shake my. So, but the idea of you bake it into the way that your architects and engineers and your data scientists, like it's just how they work. They don't have to think about it as a conscious separate step. It makes it so much easier to have confidence that you're doing the right thing all the way along.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that has become embedded in the way that we deploy technology versus something else.
That's wild. And by wild, here's what I mean, Bill. You just connected, I think, a synapse for me that governance done right feels like an accelerant, not a brake pedal.
For sure. It
1000%.
speeds up innovation.
That's pretty cool.
Right.
If the chief risk officer is the person that's reputations of putting no in innovation, that's all that they do, that is a problem.
Yeah.
How does this relate to the evolution of tech talent and kind of where we're needing folks to be tech savvy or have that data fluency?
What we hit on, it's a huge concern. Like just overall, no organization has enough technology talent for the existing slate of things in front of them, much less all the change and advances happening. So good news, AI is helping folks gain expertise faster, unlock potential. But this idea of how do we invest, be thoughtful about the business needs of the skills that we need tomorrow? How do we partner differently? I think one of the things Deloitte's done really well over the years is invest heavily in engineering and AI to be able to help our clients, not do it for them, but help them build up the muscle while they're making immediate progress on it. And by the way, we're doing massive investments within Deloitte on technology. That's not just our advisory consulting business, it's within our tax business, our audit business, because it's such an important part of how we serve our clients. Like to be certified to serve, you have to have a level of tech acumen that's different than it was many years ago.
Yeah.
And that's from new hires coming in for the most senior partners in Deloitte. That's for our clients, folks working in the server room up to the boardroom. But in a world of many priorities, the best organizations are the ones where the CEO is saying, this is something we have to invest in. This isn't a luxury, this isn't an option. Like we need to build a different culture, and that's exciting.
Yeah, and I think, it's tech talent that obviously needs to understand the technology, the use cases, but it's talent broadly, to your point, Kelly.
Yeah.
It's across the organization.
1000%.
And that intimacy and that proximity with the technology, getting your hands on, letting employees interface with it, that's going to spur more ideas and saying, well, that's not what I need, or that's what I need, or that could lead to something else. Is that proximity so important to the technology? And they don't know what they don't know. And there's still this kind of, is that going to take over my job? But there is an element of how do you create more of an engaged workforce through the technology, right? How does AI drive more of the soft skills that people can lean into, that critical thinking, and that all leads to well-being implications, positive ones, as well as engagement.
And organizational fitness. I mean, you guys as friends and work fam know that I'm forever yakking about how futurists are secretly historians.
Yeah.
At this AI moment, I can't help think back to the original World Wide Web.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember there were two kinds of company reactions. Group A expressly forbid the use of the internet at work.
Yeah.
Group B was like, knock yourselves out.
Yeah.
And Group A is not around anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think this isn't a license for, as Bill sometimes said, Julie, you call it random acts of digital,
Yeah.
but it certainly is a license for a culture of experimentation and learning, yeah.
Well, because it's not even in our daily work jobs, it's in our personal lives too, right? So rolling up your sleeves and trying out that new thing, even if it's personally, like you have an opportunity to become tech fluent regardless of what you majored in 15 years ago.
The last couple of years, people talk about grit a lot. Grit is one of the things you want more of your employees to have, which I like as a baseline. But this curiosity with demystifying and taking the fear out of being hands-on on technology.
Yeah.
That I'd rather have the clerk that's running the retail store tell me how to do better for my customer.
Frontline workers.
Yeah, than the executive in corporate office 1,000 miles away, who's never rung up a.
Well, spatial computing is going to help with that.
100%. Well, and it's going to make it real for them.
Yeah.
But then the flip side of, like, how do we then do two things? And you guys know I love to talk about dialectics. Two statements that might seem like contradictory, but they both can be true at once. We need more hands-on experimentation and curiosity from especially the business and the folks in the front line where business is being done. And we've got to have the ability to scale quickly, which requires investments in platform and engineering rigor and discipline.
Yeah.
And those two things can become a virtuous flywheel if done right. The danger becomes if you're only known for perpetual pilots and empty demos and proofs of concepts that are interesting in a toy example moment, and they never become anything real. Which, by the way, we kind of lived through that the last few years with AI, and the potential for the ones doing it right is off the charts.
Sure.
Yeah.
But there's a talk track of, we didn't invest in our data, and we didn't invest in engineering disciplines and pipelines, and we haven't trained our people on how to use it. But it's not real because we're not seeing the value we expected.
Right.
Well, okay. There's some causality in those statements.
And it still drives some proximity. And Mike, you used the example of the World Wide Web. I'll bring it a little bit closer to today.
To modern times.
Current
For the young generation.
When the steam engine came around, I remember
The historian. But if you think about 2019 and the conversation we're having in 2019 with a number of CIOs, like, oh, my organization would never move to remote work. Fast forward to February 2020, still, nope, not going to happen. No one's going to be working remote. And it's CIOs saying, we have the technology. We can deliver this. We can bring it. And it took a pandemic to show organizations that it can be done. And I think we're kind of in that moment again, where CIOs are saying, we have the technology. It can be done.
Right.
And to your point around how to use Gen AI within the IT shop to show the potential of it.
Right.
Tied with the tech talent issue, we still have recruiting, retainment, attraction issues for tech talent. How do you create productivity? How do you use those solutions to be the low-hanging fruit, to be the proof of concepts that show the value? I think there's some real goodness there.
Built to scale.
Yeah,
Right?
I love it. How can organizations maintain a human-centric approach as they think about this year's trends?
Man, Kelly, you and I mean, if we're being honest, we've lived this firsthand, right? In conversations with client after client, you can see this micro reaction where people realize this stuff isn't about robot replacements.
No. Yep.
It's a super suit, right? It can turn my great employees into super great.
Yep.
Right? And so I think one is really this recognition we hit on a bit earlier that, as we called it, genius in, genius squared. AI should start with business problems worth solving.
Yeah.
And take a path, right, without exception, a path through enablement and augmentation of our best people. I think that's thing one. I would love, Anjali, to hear what you've been seeing with clients, or Bill, what you've been seeing in boardrooms.
I think with clients and in boardrooms, the potential is exactly that there's not enough talent to do the work that we want to do. How do we give them a new set of tools and armor to do better? But the human aspect of it, I don't think it's a humans competing with AI type of scenario. It's how do you coexist, and how does AI help amplify the human touch or the human interface with everything we do day in, day out? And leading with business need is important. And I'll go back to what you said, Kelly. The customer is expecting it.
Yeah.
The customers are human.
Right.
Right.
All business is human.
Yes, exactly. And so we don't move away from it. I think there's still this underlying fear of, is it going to replace my job? Yeah. And I think the narrative has fast forwarded, and we know that's not the biggest use or best use of AI. It is not the cost savings or cost avoidance. It is truly the transformation of how we effectively all do better as employees and get more out of companies as customers. Yeah.
Yeah, we sometimes say, and maybe it's a trend for next year, that AI is the new UI.
Yeah.
And I think we look at the history of technology, for most people, it hasn't been all that fun and intuitive in their jobs, right? Technology at large.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, for sure.
Where we force people to work the way that the tool, the custom system was built, the package technology put in place, or the cloud solution we had, we'd force them to kind of contort themselves in a way to be able to use the tool because you're trying to standardize work, but it didn't feel natural, maybe not the way they wanted to do it, but we had to.
Right.
So you switch to the world where, hey, we're making the tool be much more able to help you achieve goals versus comply to a workflow,
Right.
which is powerful. And then when we talk about AI helping take away some of the tasks, within our own engineering shop, we've invested in our Deloitte engineering platform. AI is embedded in how we deliver software. The things that AI is doing for me as an engineer are the things I never wanted to do.
Yep.
It's environment provisioning.
Yep.
That's not why I went in engineering. It's unit tests.
It's testing, it's QA.
It's documentation. It's the build pathways that you have to have in place. So like this idea of we're squashing the humanity as we automate and embed AI, it's the opposite.
It's an elevation.
Innovation.
It's the super suit.
Less time on muck, more time on man.
I think the engagement and empowerment scores are going to go through the roof. Yeah.
We already saw it.
Right?
It's happening.
Yeah.
Right. And
Really?
we'll see a world where, in that example, right now it's helping individuals when they're stuck and it's doing these tasks they didn't like. There's a world not too distant where we talk about paired programming, which a lot of in the Agile Scrum movement people would do. Anjali and I would both be 4 hands on keyboard to get the best of our collective wisdom. We'll have that as an AI coder with us, partnering with us in the more creative areas, which is going to be an unlock. It's not going to be a suppressor.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my old colleagues told me over a drink, he said, AI is the best brainstorming partner he's ever had. And it hit me like a ton of bricks where I thought to myself, what a uniquely human thing to say. And like robot, creative, sidekick. Yeah, okay.
I love it.
Yeah.
What excites you the most about where we're headed?
That we're heading there at a quicker pace with more and more visibility, awareness, sponsorship support from business and government leaders. Because to the a theme of the ceiling is our imagination and willingness to invest and invent and basically put status quo on its ear and reimagine. So like the collection of, and we say it sometimes, but we've never seen so much technology change happening at the same time, which is true. And we could play back a tape where my hair was much lower 16 years ago. At Tech Trends 2010, I probably said something similar. But it's emphatically still true.
Yeah.
And the fact that the future is more noble than it feels, and we're helping so it's not random acts of invention and alien technology coming down from another planet. We've never seen it before or thought about it. But the role that we all have, I was at a conference a few months ago where the takeaway was, as technologists, we have the right and the ability to define the future.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing, but the responsibility is high to not waste this moment.
I've spent the last decade on the CIO program with tech executives. To me, what is so exciting is that persona is at the center. It's spotlighted their role. We're seeing that with the reporting relationships change to being direct to the CEO, but even more exciting about it is when a retired CIO will be like, man, I wish I was still in the game because it's such an exciting time.
Right? Which was said 0 times this decade ago. I wasn't fishing today, so I could practice.
And they're golfing. Oh my gosh, it's such an exciting time to be a technologist, but more exciting is everyone is a technologist now, whether they like it or they know it. And I don't think that we're going to get away with being that 101 level tech fluent anymore. It has to be the 201. And I'll just end where on a point that you made, that there is a fatigue around AI maybe, but I might flip that and say there's a buzz and there's an energy around it.
Are there any trends that we didn't hit on that you want to go over?
Well, there's two, and they're both on the more computation side of the spectrum. One of them is quantum, and specifically what it means is we hit post-quantum cryptography, which is a huge looming topic. And the other one is just how we're seeing a shift in the strategic posture of hardware, which is pretty fascinating.
Well,
Yeah.
let's take those last in, first out,
Okay.
or LIFO, as we nerds call it. So, for 15 years, the venture community, and in turn the enterprise community, has followed this credo, first penned by Mark Andreessen. He said, software is eating the world. And there was this feeling that software was the superior business model. It was the key to strategic differentiation. I remember, having been a venture capitalist, if we saw as a service applied to a model, we would maybe not write a check, but we'd read it a little more closely.
Yeah.
Software scales, and there's a lot to like. But then these AI-fueled workflows showed up. And all of a sudden, for the first time in a professional generation, hardware started to matter again. People were saying, maybe all this stuff that I had outsourced might be worthy of an insource. And that doesn't mean we're writing off the cloud. I mean, cloud can be great, but it's gone from a no-brainer to a big brainer.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes you're going to want to run your own GPU, NPU chips in your own basement. Now, the sort of riding sidecar to this sudden resurgence of hardware as a differentiator is the emergence of physical robotics. I mean, one of the things that blew my mind this year, Bill and Anjali, was talking to firms like Mitra that said, listen, we've realized that 80% of the world's economy is moving stuff, right? Atoms, not bits and pixels.
Yeah.
And so how can we build a platform to more extensively and scalably and affordably move things around? They've got these little robots that can lift like 1 jillion pounds and treat a physical warehouse like a cloud computing matrix. And so that's all to say, hardware matters again, guys.
Yeah. And the idea that edge and hardware, where business is occurring, on a truck, in a warehouse, on a hospital floor. And then we talk in the chapter about AI, like small models are the rage. And we're seeing model diffusion, but the whole idea of it is, I want things that have no latency, have a small footprint, that can be wherever I need it, wherever in the world, that the actual action is happening.
Right.
But to do that, we need to run it on hardware, right? So the idea that we can have dedicated AI-ready PCs, laptops, sensors, edge devices is amazing.
Yep.
Back to our theme, what do we do with it? Like, it can be amazing. And we're at a point where we absolutely have to have it be a consideration, right?
100%.
Well, and I would say, the CIA's role as a chief educator for the organization around some of these decisions on, how much are you going to move things back into your four walls from a hardware infrastructure perspective. Mike, what would you advise a CIO that's talking to their board or their CEO or more importantly, the CFO on why they need to start making these heavy hardware investments again?
Right. Well, right. You're right, Anjali, right? Because there's nothing like coming in and saying, time for CapEx.
Right.
Right? That's not a winning headline. I think we've talked today about the importance of starting with the business problem and leading with need. I think that annuity OpEx checks to third parties is a known rhythm for C-suites and boards right now. I think if you come in and say, instead of, hey, it's CapEx, if you come in and say, there's a whole set of new and improved capabilities that we can deliver on, and good news, it only requires some modest investment in physical kit, then all of a sudden people are starting to say, okay, this is a coherent cost benefit, not a
Trace commas.
3 comma
Yeah.
scenario. Great question.
All right, so let's hit on the quantum, and it's in the cyber trust risk section of our macro forces. And we've been investing in quantum for a long time, right? And quantum computing, basically unlocking the power of physics over traditional math.
That's it. I mean, that's the headline, isn't it?
I mean,
Right.
which is a heady, and we're still not struggling with, but we're figuring out the types of problems quantum will be very well suited to solve.
Right.
It just happens to turn out one of those is the underpinning of public and private key encryption.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
As you literally took the words out of my mouth. Bill and Cal, Y2Q is the term that I heard over the course of this research. And I giggled at first because, again, as someone with last century skills with my...
Where were you in 1999?
Yeah, tragic. Yeah, keep it up.
Pass.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Y2K was a conundrum.
Yeah.
And everybody marshaled their best efforts to prepare for it and rectify and for those of a certain age, Y2K was, oh goodness, the computer dates aren't going to work in the next millennium because it was 1970 and it was the last thing on our mind. Well, fast forward. We figured it out and declared victory and the world carried.
Nothing happened.
Here's the road.
Only nothing happened because there was an immense amount of investment to make sure that we could go and refactor all of the systems that run all of capitalism and government.
Bingo. Yeah.
In the world, right?
Humanity did a solid in that regard.
Rose to the cause.
Here's Y2Q, or the year that quantum supremacy as regards cryptography happens. Here's what this means in plain English.
Yeah.
As Bill said, there's going to be a day where quantum computers can crack not just a password, but all the passwords.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Scary.
The rub is we don't know precisely when it comes. Is it 3, 5, 7, 12 years? It depends on the slope of your hockey stick. And so what we've seen in this year's tech trends is that recommendations from NIST, the standards body, interesting startups from all over the world, and enterprises too, are starting to say, listen, good news, there are ways to build this defense fortification to prepare for that eventuality now.
Yeah.
And so the trick and the recommendation to orgs, and Anjali, would love your take, is we need you to spend 5% less of your time putting out today's fires for fire prevention for this thing that's going to happen in 5 to 10 years. And that's tricky, balancing the important and the urgent.
Well, and I think keeping your eye on like the long-term target on this is where the business strategy is going, this is our vision, kind of like looking around those 4 or 5 corners, and having that risk conversation up front. So having your CISO at the table to build that foundation is even more critical when you think about the threat actors that are going to show up because of this technology.
Old client mentor of mine, never let a crisis go to waste. So here's why I love this actually. We have to invest, and the timing is now. And in the report, we talk about JPMC is doing some aggressive things already because we know this is coming. Not sure exactly when. That's the conundrum. Coltrane, the only time we need deadlines. We don't have a deadline, but we know it's soon. And when it hits, it's going to be too late. So I used to say, while the patient's on the operating table, and someone coached me, maybe you, that's a little grisly. So while the car is in the garage and the hood's open, and we're doing the things we have to do to get our encryption house in order, we can make some of the same investments we need in the systems, the APIs, the data that we know are fueling agentic AI future, as an example. And so just like we could have done with Y2K, and I think we largely missed the chance to use that to not just Band-Aid the problem, but modernize the core, there's a chance to do it differently this time. But it requires not just the CIO begrudgingly taking this on, getting the broader organization to say it's a priority. We need to allocate the right investment to it. And we're going to do it in a bounded way. It's going to be surgical, targeted, but it has to happen.
Kelly, I might ask you, what are you pumped about? And what fills your cup as regards the next couple of years in this emerging tech maelstrom?
I just love that we have the power now more than ever to really co-create what that future is, right? So I think to the notion that Bill said, I think the opportunities are endless. And so the importance of lead with need, like you said earlier, is very important because there's so much we can do. But let's focus on solving those big problems and what we should do and start there. And I think, it's just going to be a great future ahead. So, well, thank you all for the time today. I could have gone on for way longer, but really grateful and so happy to be here with you.
Thank you for having us, Kelly.
No problem. And to the audience, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check out the report. You'll see the link available in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Kel.